Hey, who would you talk to? What's going on? It is me. It is Mike Lepre, the King Michael. This is legitpodcast.com presenting the world of legit fantasy wrestling. So we've done it with basketball. We've done it with football. We've done it with paranormal. We're going to do it now with wrestling. That's our goal. That's the goal of this. Joining me, Joey Paranormal. Joe, what's going on?
Not much. Yourself?
Joe, way too much stuff. Look, see my shirt? I'm literally wearing that on purpose. Like, too much stuff. You know what I mean? Just even having a beard seems like an aggravation to me, Joe.
I wish I could grow my beard out.
You can't?
Nope. I got to shave just about every day. At least Tuesday through Friday.
Yeah, I'm not a shaver.
Uniform, man. You can't have a beard uniform.
I'm not a shaver. I don't like shaving. I don't like shaving. Plus, it hides it. Plus, it covers up the worst part of your face.
Well, exactly. Yeah. You should have seen me prior to when I joined. I used to have the now I can't think of it. I guess the Kerry King, Billy Goat, or the lead singer Anthrax. That just that goatee. It didn't go down that far, but you know.
This is like a reverse turtleneck.
Yeah.
That's what I call it. Pretty much, it's covering up the other spot. You know. So, Joe, joining us this week, right, is I've come up with a million names for him, right? I really have. He goes by Duke, the original outlaw Duke Randall, which is one of the best wrestling names and porno names I've ever heard at the same time, right? But this is a name that I swear to you, we drove home from Virginia and it was like an 8-hour drive. And I must have thought about this, and I don't know why, but I kept saying he should use the adjective dastardly Duke Randall. I picture an old school outlaw, like a guy, but too bad he didn't have like a big long black mustache. But I immediately picture that because the word dastardly is no longer used. It's not easy to say, and really, what can you attach it to? Right? So why not a wrestler? So let's bring in Zach. Zach, how are you?
Doing all right, boys. Yourself?
I'm doing good, man. Doing good. So it's Zach Starrick, right? Starrick?
Yep.
You know how my accent is. I screw up every word. But so
I know. I met in the car with you before.
What's that?
I rode in the car with you and Kev before.
Yeah, that's right. And one of the first stories you told us was about holding up a gun to somebody. And I remember thinking, wow, there's a story to start it off with. Let's see where this ride ends up. But no, so Zach's in a bunch of fields. He's with cryptids, deals with cryptids, the whole paranormal side. Joe, you're on the paranormal side, but Joe's actually in Buddy's Ocean State Paranormal Group. So you both are from the paranormal world, but also, which makes sense that you're also in the wrestling world because it's, you know, why not? All right, Zach, what do you think about Dastardly though? Be honest, because I love it.
You know, when you pitched that to me yesterday and everything, and I started tossing it around, and I kept trying to put it with both of the old school outlaw, which I came up with along with a couple other people, and then with Dastardly. You know, I mean, it would go and work if I was working heel my entire career, which I kind of was, but old school is just my style. That's the kind of wrestling I grew up with, where watching Luthez, Burton Gagne, Yukon Eric, Killer Kowalski, Haystack Calhoun, Buddy Rogers. That's all the old kind of wrestling I grew up with. And that's the kind of wrestling that my grandfather actually did whenever he was a carnival wrestler. So, you know, it kind of was in my blood. So that's where the old school part came up with. And then they started, whenever I was first starting my training, they called me the Southern Outlaw And I ran with that for a while, but then I'm like, there's too many outlaws in the independent wrestling scene. So I got to make it unique to my character, to my gimmick. And so I'm like, well, Old School Outlaw sounds pretty cool. And actually, how I got the name was I was in an embroidery shop in Carbondale, Illinois, where SIU is. And I was looking to get a hat made, just a cheap gimmick, self-promoting kind of thing. And the guy's like, what do you want put on it? And I said, well, I want Duke Randall put on it. And I actually got the hat right here.
Old School Outlaw Duke Randall.
Yep.
That's awesome.
And he goes, what else would you like with it? And well, at the time I was going as the Bull of Crab Orchard because, I was tough. It took a lot to put me down, and Crab Orchard's my hometown. And I'm like, why don't we try Old School Outlaw? And it stuck.
Hold on one second. I'm trying to answer somebody's question about you. It's weird too because old school to you is different than like if somebody in my area went old school. That would be more like Run DMC. Do you know what I'm trying to say? Like there's two different types of old school. That's why I appreciate your angle on it. I like the name. I just like Dastardly because it then allows you to just constantly interrupt in people's fights, constantly pull any kind of dirty underhand trick you want. Like, you know what I mean? It just gives you that freedom to be a jerk. And I would love that. I would.
I was a jerk even before you gave me that thing. I was every bit as heelish as I could be whenever I'd be in the ring, whether I'd be in front of a crowd or I would be doing practice matches. I was biting them. I was gouging their eyes, pulling their nose. I was pulling their hair, grabbing them by the beard, by the ear, by the nose, by the cheek, and I was going and fish hooking them and all that kind of stuff. I was as heelish as you could get.
That's awesome. See, now, Joe, have you, there's a lot of wind coming from your side. Here when I mute it?
It's a central air in this place. It's like 30 years old. It's velocity induction, PVC pipes with little holes in the ceiling, and it's loud as absolute hell. It's right outside my window. So, yeah, if you want to keep just muting me, and I'll just start telling.
Because we're going to get a tornado, but it sounds like there's one in your room.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Right now? So, but no, what I want to ask Joe really quick was, did you ever want to wrestle? Did you ever try to wrestle yourself?
I mean, like every kid who was into wrestling, like I always wanted to wrestle. I'd wrestle the pillow on my bed, and I would do all the moves and stuff. But I was never able to find any type of place where other people were wrestling around here. So it was never something I ended up pursuing.
So with me, it was this way. We had a big New England wrestling because Killer Kowalski's from Mass, so he's the closest guy to us, and his school fed a lot of people, and we're right next to Connecticut, technically. So when we were in a band, what ended up happening was we had a couple of local wrestlers take our songs, ask for to use our songs as intros, which I was cool with. You know what I mean? Like I was like, yeah, you can play one of our songs to an intro. And then so this one kid decided to get somewhat big locally. He was called the Vertebraker. And that was my one chance because I played basketball my whole life. I played sports my whole life, right? Always wanted to wrestle. I love the idea of selling. Like I love the whole idea of everything. I've had a character in my head, and you guys, Joe, you could attest to this. How I am. I've had stuff in my head for years, but I've had my wrestling concept forever, and I had one chance to do it. And my angle, Zach, tell me if you appreciate this angle. I wanted to have the kid introduce us in the crowd as being the band that does his intro, right? Before his match. And then he loses the match. And then he invites us into the ring. And as we're shaking his hand, I smash him over the head with the microphone. And then I tell him that we don't play songs for losers. Mic to his chest, walk out of the ring to booze. Wouldn't that have worked?
Yeah, that's a heel angle.
Yeah. That's what I wanted to be. I want to be a heel angle because he wanted to do a match with me because I could do basic stuff and like I can learn stuff because I'm athletic. But my wife went, no. My wife stopped that. so cold in its tracks, dude. And the thing is, she lets me get away with a lot of shit, but like that, she was like, "No, you're not gonna do it. You're not gonna do it. You're not gonna do it," because she knows how I am, and like I'm competitive. I would love to have done that. That's like one thing that I do regret not doing in my life is getting to an angle like that. And being a heel is so much better than being cheered. Would you guys both
do
agree?
whatever the hell you want.
Oh, Joe, you're a good guy. Is that what it is?
Yeah, I'd want to be the face, but that's kind of besides the point, I guess.
No, that's a good point. That's kind of crazy. Why would you want to be the face?
I don't know. I've never been someone who liked being booed, so and I don't
sell more merch.
And I don't have an angry or I guess if I'm driving I got an asshole bone in my body, but I just never. I don't know. I've never been the type that likes to piss people off. So I'd rather be the hero that makes the save than the asshole that leaves the ring during the middle of a tag match and just says, "You know what? I'm not losing. I'm out of here. You're on your own."
So then, Zach, basically, me and you deep down are kind of assholes.
I've been a savage since I was 12 years old. Don't get me started.
I'm sure we could go East Coast, South stories of just total jerkiness. But all right, let me ask you about this finishing move. What was the move? And let me before you answer that. Has anybody seen the TV show Heels? It's on Stars. It's the wrestling show that stars the kid from the Green Arrow kid, the one that came into wrestling for a little bit with Cody Rhodes. Yeah, Steve, there it is.
I'm wanting to. It's just actually having where I'm able to watch it and everything. I saw it. I saw the promo for it on TikTok, and I am like, oh shit, that is a good show.
Not only that, it's up your alley, man. And in the sense that it's in Georgia, so it's got more of a southern kind of feel to it, and it's like a small town, and they love their wrestling. It's such a good show, man. And episode 3 came out, and CM Punk was in it. He was playing some like guy with like a mullet, and that was like a former like whatever. But dude, that show is phenomenal, and it's a good wrestling show in that sense. But that guy uses the finishing move I always wanted to use. You know, the reverse. You get you get from behind a guy, pull his head back, you smile for the camera, and then you drop on him, almost like the Big Show's drop. But I always wanted to do it where I would stop for a second, make sure I found the camera and posed to be a dick, and then drove him down. He does that in the show. I was like, Jesus, he does my finishing move. I'm like, much better than I would have done it. But yeah, that's what he's doing basically. The main character.
Where he hooks him up, Scorpion Death drop, and then swings the arm around and drops the elbow on him. But I would look for the camera. He looked for the camera. He blew my mind when he did it. He looked for the camera to make sure they took a picture of it to be like more of a jerk, and then dropped him. I feel like sometimes when you hesitate on a finisher, you hold it. That's a heel move. That's like a real like heat moment. Like you know you got him, and you just want everybody to know you got him before you drop him, right? Let them know, and then you drop him. So what was your finisher, Zach? The headshot stunner. It was a ripcord stunner.
All right, run me through it though, because for people that don't understand it, like you throw him against the ropes. How'd you set him up?
I go and I get him up to where I'd throw a forearm or a shot, and I'd go and I'd get them where they spun around, and I'd grab their arm from around their body, and I'd shove them out, and I'd grab them, but I'd hold on to the wrist, and I'd pull them back in, and I'd hook it for that stunner and do the ass drop.
All right, that's a little complicated, right? Because it's the problem with the only problem with that finisher would be that you need to set it up. Right.
Well, here's the thing, though. Mike, I took a lot of the inspiration, not only from Stone Cold Steve Austin, but Diamond Dallas Page and Mikey Whipwreck, because they could hit their finish out of nowhere. Like that Mikey Whipwreck, he'd go and he'd either throw them up in the air and catch them on the way down. He'd just do the regular boot to the gut stunner. He'd do a flip off the top rope, holding them like the Scorpion Death drop on the top rope, and do the front flip and hit it. Dallas Page would do all of that kind of stuff and drop them. And it's just like any kind of cutter can be hit out of nowhere. It doesn't necessarily have to be set up. I mean, I hit it one time out of a rock bottom, and I just went and I just hooked him up and just come back in and dropped him.
Now, see, now Joe, like with that move, how far off is the RKO, in your opinion?
What, from a stunner?
Yeah.
I mean, I think they're executed pretty differently. Especially because, I mean, with like the cutter, the RKO, however you want to, pronounce it, like both wrestlers are landing. Either one's landing like on their back, sprawled out. The other one's landing face first. With a stunner, especially to kind of keep the other person safe, you figure they want to be on their knees, and you're landing on your ass. So
but an RKO is just kicking it out. It's just a kick out. You're kicking out your body, letting your feet go, and they're letting their body go forward, and it's just falling forward in a sense.
I mean, yeah, it's similar, but still different, I think, in execution and in the way it looks.
Zach, what do you think?
I mean, it's basically the same move, except you're taking a different style bump. Stunner, you're taking an ass bump, and then
RKO is your back.
And then with the cutter, you're taking a flat back bump.
Yeah.
It's basically the same thing, just different style bump you're taking.
It's like a Joe. It's like almost like I guess like you're kicking out your leg, you're pulling the guy with you, type of difference.
Yeah.
All right, Zach, biggest match you ever had? Before we get into some other stuff, biggest match.
All of my matches were big to me. I mean, a majority of the matches I was ever in was for titles. My first match was actually against the Millennial Nightmare, Axe Allwork, for the heavyweight title. Second match was for the tag titles.
The Millennial what? The Millennial what?
Millennial Nightmare.
I don't know. Is that a big name down there?
Mm-hmm.
No offense to the gentleman with that moniker, but when I think of millennials and then I think of nightmare, it's like an oxymoron. It's just the same type of word repeated twice. So I don't know.
Axe is actually a pretty big name here in the tri-state area: Missouri, Indiana, Illinois, Kentucky, Tennessee. He's been wrestling now for 21 years, and he was actually trained by the Funks.
Ah, there you go.
He went all the way down to Florida, and he trained underneath of them, and he's actually literally less than 100 miles from where I live, and that's where he's from, Willisville, Illinois. And how he got started off, he was the old school warrior, Axe Allwork, and he came out. He does a pile driver as his finish. He does the fist drop as a signature, and he does a lot of old school technical wrestling. And he's on Facebook every day, cutting promos and everything about saying how millennial trash and millennial swine are uneducated and they looking for handouts. They don't want to work. And he said, I'll show them what a real man is. And he comes out with spiked bleached blonde hair with tiger stripe or sugar skull tights on.
Right, I like him now. I like him
with a leather vest and a chain around his neck.
I like him. He sounds much better, Joe, right?
Yeah, a little bit.
The presentation's much better than the name.
He's got the body of a god, too. I mean, this guy works out religiously, doing heavy lifting and everything. I mean, him and me do pose-offs all the time and everything, and it's always fun and everything. And, I mean, he was one of the first people to actually take me under his wing in the professional wrestling business. And my first match, I was a bundle of nerves, and I said, does anybody give me any kind of advice to go and actually, be a good professional wrestler? And he said, go out there, have fun, just don't fuck up.
Yeah. That's sound advice for anything you do. Here's the thing that I learned about stuff like that. So I wasn't somebody who got nervous and I had to go up on stage, right? Never did. We would do Joe, how far ahead of you were we as a band? Like, did you get the very end of us, or did you miss us completely?
I missed you guys completely. So I only know about you guys through Buddy, because he was big. He listened to you guys a lot, and then Kilgore.
Buddy was there all the time in the mosh pit. And he's a monster. He's 6'4". He's a big guy, right?
He's been big.
So we would do like 300-400 a show. That's what it was. But we got to do this thing called the Deary Palooza in Deary, New Hampshire. I get out to Deary, New Hampshire, right? And I'm like, I don't know what this is going to be. Because we played shows where it was like, there's 10 people there. You don't know what you're walking into. But we get there, and it's like thousands of kids. And I'm like, oh, okay. So we go on stage, and the heat from the crowd hit us like a heat fan. And that might have been the only time in my life where I had that moment of like, oh Jesus, like what did I just get myself into? Because you know what I mean? Like you got the feeling like that if you stink, they could just charge a stage. Like there's so many people, you're dead. But what I did learn is this: you have to just let go and go 100%, whatever you do, whether it's good, bad, or indifferent. Because the minute they see you crack, the minute they see that you're not completely being yourself or legit or completely into the character, whatever it is, that's to me when you fail. Like you can bomb as a comedian, but if you stay within your gimmick and your jokes, you still succeeded. It's just people's opinion. Does that make sense? Like you gotta go in. Like you can't put your foot in the water. You got to jump all the way in. And I would expect that's the same as a wrestler. The minute you walk out there, if you're not 100, they're gonna know.
Exactly. It's just, you got to stay in character the whole time, and you got to keep the crowd engaged because it's all psychology. You got to keep them engaged, otherwise they will eat you alive.
Yep. It's weird. They're two different things, but this is one thing that I did learn. Like I had to act like I was in total control, even when I wasn't, because like you just said, you never want to give it up to the crowd. You don't want them to run the show. Once that happens, you're in big trouble. Let's talk about current wrestling. There's a bunch of things going on. I want to get your guys' opinion. So AEW, they pretty much didn't officially announce it, but they've leaked it to the point that it should be official that Daniel Bryan will be joining AEW. Now, Bray Wyatt, this pictures of him sitting in the stands at AEW shows. I think he's going to go there instead of going to like Impact. I think they're going to make him go there. I hope he brings along Braun. But anyways, putting them aside and the fact that I really think this is going to be the first time in a long time we're going to have a wrestling war again. The WWE and their champions and the fact that their shows are always the same matches every single week. I just want to go over the champions and maybe this is why I think they're not doing as well as they should. Because if you compare champions to champions, I don't see guys that like in other words, you can still bring back a Cena, a Rock, a whoever, and they're right away the biggest person in the WWE. You know what I mean? Like that shouldn't be. It shouldn't be that you can just bring somebody back and they're the biggest person. But all right. So I like Roman Reigns, SmackDown champion. I like that whole head of the table concept, right? I don't know what the Bobby Lashley one is. I feel like they never knew what to do with him. Like he's like, is he Brock Lesnar? Is he like more like a Evolution type dress up? Like, and they're both heels. What do you guys think of them as? First of all, I think Roman doesn't get enough credit for his ability to work a match. I really don't. I don't think he'll ever get credit. He's one of those guys that like Cena, they just kind of get slapped with that like certain deaths of moves of death, and that's it. But Joe, you're watching it. What do you think of the two champions in the whole direction? Because I think Roman's he's all SmackDown. The whole show is him, and then Bobby Lashley is with MVP, and they come out every now and then, and it doesn't seem even like. What are your thoughts on the champion?
I mean, all right. So I'll say that I've been a big fan of Bobby Lashley for a very long time. I think. For one, I just don't think that people of color are represented well in WWE. I think that's pretty infamous. And I love that they finally pulled the trigger and gave it to someone who is very deserving. Bobby Lashley's been cutting his teeth in professional wrestling for the better part of 2 decades. And they wasted him in his first run with the company. And they came this close to doing it again in this run until they pulled the trigger. And even more surprisingly, at WrestleMania, they kept the title on him, which I also thought was a huge move for them.
But Joe, he's not interesting.
I know, and that's what I was trying to get to. Is the character and the gimmick. They should have kept the Hurt Locker together. You would have kind of like a Raw version of the Bloodline on Raw. I mean, you have the Raw version of the Bloodline that's over on SmackDown with Shelton Benjamin, Cedric Alexander. You could bring in a female superstar to add to that group. They didn't destroy him, but using MVP as the mouthpiece, he doesn't do anything. He just kind of comes out, destroys people, and leaves. So they did try to turn him into Brock Lesnar, but he doesn't have that aura. and it sucks because I think Bobby Lashley should get a little more credit for the work that he's put in his body and what he's done. But
even Shelton Benjamin, great wrestler, but boring.
Yeah.
So like they put boring people together. Zach, your thoughts on Bobby Lashley as a performer?
Phenomenal athlete, terrible gimmick.
Yeah.
I mean, I've been a fan of Bobby Lashley since I found out he was an Impact. He was a beast. He was over. He was a phenomenal heel in Impact. And then they took him to WWE and they shit the bed with him. They didn't know what to do with him. And here's the thing. It's all about getting over with the crowd. You got to be good in ring. You got to be able to cut a promo that can engage the crowd and make them believe the storyline. And, you know, it's just why I guess they put MVP with him as his manager, because MVP is good as Mike. He is a 10 on the mic. Bobby Lashley, they put him in with that storyline with Rusev and Lana, and they ruined it. They ruined that. Basically, they're making him a playboy. I can see why they go and they brought that over if they were like had him surrounded by women as his current gimmick as the Almighty One. But I mean, you know, the guy's a killer. He's a beast. I mean, he's ex-military. He's a cage fighter in Bellator. As far as I know, he's undefeated in Bellator. He's a beast. And there's so many people calling for him and Lesnar to face each other for years, and they keep shutting it down. That would be a big money match. Bobby Lashley against Brock Lesnar, 2 UFC fighters, 2 NCAA champions. 2 of them, they are incredible physical specimens. They are athletic as fuck in the ring. And they are all ground-based, and they're not doing any kind of flippy shit. Choreographed tumbling, as Luthez would call it. They are diehards for their art that is professional wrestling. It's bad booking, bad creative.
He's boring though. Look, certain guys are boring, and as a person, he's a boring character. So my thing is this: you got a boring champion in Bobby Lashley, and then you got a guy in Roman Reigns who's trying to pretend to be kind of like boring, but in a sense more of like he doesn't have time to speak with like the peons. Do you know what I mean? Like he's got a different angle. So you've got 2 champions that don't like beat their chests with like how great they are. Well, I guess with charisma is what I'm trying to say. And yes. Wait, so let me just expand to that. The Intercontinental Champion is King Nakamura, which can't cut a promo. They don't book him right. How he became king without winning the King of the Ring tournament by just beating, what's his name? Corbin, makes no sense. And then you get Damian Priest as United States champion. And I'm not buying into him either. He's not interesting. So are you guys noticing a trend with these guys? Like Nakamura is Intercontinental champion, right? How's he going to cut a promo?
Exactly. It's all, especially the guy that trained me, stuck this in my head because we used to work together and we would talk wrestling all day long. He stuck this in my head. Whenever it comes to independent wrestling, you're getting yourself over with the fans, you're self-funded. But whenever you get to places like Ring of Honor, WWE, Impact, it's all about investors calling the shots. They'll say, we're going to put X amount of money towards your company, but you got to push this guy to the freaking moon. It's all about money from the investors, honestly. The heart and soul has gone out of professional wrestling, and they are pushing these guys that are trying to be badasses and over these guys that actually, I believe, could carry the company. And they go and they make all kinds of bad decisions. Like back whenever Elias was in that storyline 2 years ago with Baron Corbin, whenever they had him turn face with the guitar shot on Corbin, I was a big fan of Elias then, and then they turned him back heel 2 weeks later. And I'm like, what the fuck? You guys had something going here. He's over with the fans as a heel, push him as a face.
The WWE seems like they go against the fans. That's literally the feeling that you get. You almost feel like, are they purposely going against the fans? Like, did they not? Like, Rusev was over. they wouldn't push him. You know?
It's the guys that get themselves over that they don't want to push. They don't want to give them the spot. And it's just like with a perfect example, Bianca Belair, the rags to riches story. She came out, won the women's Royal Rumble, and she beat a tremendous heel in Sasha Banks at WrestleMania with an amazing finish. Whipping her with the braid for a shoot. KOD 1, 2, 3, and she's champion from WrestleMania all the way up to this past weekend, and then they job her out.
Mm-hmm.
It ain't like she was losing any kind of momentum with the fans. She was over like Grover with the fans. But then they bring back someone like Becky Lynch, and you would think that they'd want Becky Lynch to come back, but no, and work her way up and build that storyline. No.
Or even work a program with Bianca before just becoming champ. Do you know what I mean? Like a little more of a build. Like they rushed Becky back to champion. They rushed her back to the belt, so that people didn't. Now, she was one of the most over wrestlers there is, and you just kind of tainted that by pushing her, in my opinion, to champ. Because a lot of people are like, all right, so those guys are boring. Let's just talk about who I don't think is boring, and that's the Raw Tag Team Champions, RK Bro. Now, Randy Orton, I've long loved his work. I like the slow pace he works at on purpose, and he's always been a real funny guy. But, dude, the ultimate bro, Matt Riddle, I don't think he knows that he's supposed to be a wrestler at times and then not a wrestler at times, because he literally thinks he's real. Like, the stuff he says on Twitter or the stuff he'll say in an interview about people, like he just slammed Roman Reigns. He slammed someone else in it.
He slammed Goldberg. Bobby
he did
Lashley.
Goldberg before. So he first did it to it wasn't Goldberg first. Yeah, it was Brock Lesnar. Brock Lesnar went up to him and told him to keep his name out of his mouth. And then he got approached by what's his name, because he brought him up. And now here he is with I love that he's doing that. But the WWE cannot be happy with the fact that he's just shooting his own promo.
You're missing too that he has heat with Seth Rollins, because his wife went on Twitter and made some comment about something about body imaging and used Becky Lynch's picture, and Seth Rollins took big offense to it. So everyone said it was a big deal that they were in the ring together at the Royal Rumble, because it meant that maybe the heat with Riddle and Seth Rollins had cooled down a little bit. But yeah, he's rubbed a lot of people the wrong way.
But is that good or bad? Because I like it in the sense of I like a guy who's willing to do that, but the WWE probably isn't going to like that for long.
I mean, that's kind of that's a tough rope to walk, because they're still pushing him, they're still featuring him, they still have him paired up with arguably their top superstar in the company next to Roman Reigns. I think if he runs his mouth a little bit too much, it'll get him into trouble. But for right now, I think it's gold. I think everything he says, everything he does is absolute gold for them.
Zach, what do you think of somebody kind of going into business for themselves like that?
It's unprofessional. I've seen guys go into business for themselves in the ring and backstage. I won't name any names, but this one guy tried to go behind the promoter's back and try to get the commissioner to start booking him, and he wanted more money. And he told him, he said no, because he was wanting to call his own shots and basically hand off a title to his protege. And I'm like, no, that's not how you do it. I've seen people go, and he got fired, and he walked out of the company like literally 5 minutes before the show in full gear. And I've seen guys go into business for themselves in the ring, and it's all about communication in the ring. You got to protect your opponent and protect yourself, but most importantly, protect your opponent. I've seen a guy go for a spot and not call it, and then get shot on in the ring whenever his opponent kicked out to him, punched him in the head. It's unprofessional. I mean, I can understand standing up for yourself in the ring, but to go and actually get yourself some cheap heat and get back to the office, that's the reason Riddle is staying on the ground.
See, Joe, now I'm caught between both of you, because I do agree with that. I like what he's doing, but I do think that he is going into business for himself, and that's how they see it. Because Roman Reigns is going to have something to say to him when they meet up. Like, don't bring me up in your in anything interview, and don't say that you could beat me up in real life.
I think in the grand scheme of things, if Roman wants to have an issue with Matt Riddle saying something about him, I think Roman Reigns should also not talk about other superstars and other promotions to try to delegitimize what's going on other places. And Roman Reigns should also start worrying about his position in his company and helping the company he's with get off the ground and turn over some new fans. So everyone's done it. I mean, I still think his shot at CM Punk was there was no need for it. And so they're both. I guess you could say Roman has a higher status in WWE and can kind of make comments like that. But
they're rival companies now. You know what I mean? So I can see somebody get slammed from a rival company. It's different than in-house slamming somebody from your own brand that he can't beat you up in a real fight.
I mean, you're right, but still, I would rather see intercompany heat than someone just trying to get cheap points for knocking a rival company, because AEW does it all the time too. And I'm really starting to come around to AEW, but it's getting old. CM Punk's was one thing, but it gets old when you've got guys like Ruby Riott referencing Buddy Murphy or Buddy Matthews, whatever he is now, referencing WWE and freedom and all this. Like, at some point, we get it. WWE's been a horrible company. They're treating people awfully, but stop getting the cheap points and the cheap hits and just taking stabs at your former employer and move on. So it happens a lot in AEW, and to get back on topic though, I don't have an issue with Matt Riddle unless it gets out of control. But I don't think right now it's out of control, and I think it's kind of in maybe all good fun.
I would understand with Riddle, now that I think about it, if it's working, like if it's a work, if it's
exactly
the fans to actually, working to a potential match and a storyline, I would understand that. But I mean, he's shooting.
Yeah,
he's
shooting.
Not working, he's shooting.
He's definitely shooting. Yeah, he's definitely just because, I mean, again, the biggest, baddest wrestler in the business, in the company, and you say that you could beat him up in real life, like that's a tough one. Like, imagine if someone said back in the 80s, I could beat up Hulk Hogan in real life. You'd be like, well, why don't you beat him up? Like, why we want the line to be blurred. What are you doing? You know what I mean?
It's like we know, like, for example, WWE's had and World Wrestling Federation has had many mixed martial arts fighters. The Beast Dan Severn, Ken Shamrock,
Steve Blackman.
Yep.
Steve Blackman. They were all legitimate badasses, but they didn't go off shooting off their mouths unless they was told by the office.
Ken Shamrock used to run his mouth a little bit.
Ken Shamrock.
But here's the thing: we know you're a legitimate badass. We know you could whoop anybody in a fight. But quit beating a dead horse.
Yeah, he's. That's the thing. I look. I love Riddle as a character. I just think the fact that he's the funny stuff he says is good for the show. I just think that in house it just shows you that there's people that want to do business one way, and then there's the WWE's way of doing business, and that's not always the right way.
If they split the brands and do another draft, which they're supposed to be doing, I guess, in October, then there might be some more clarity to those comments. Because if he ends up on SmackDown, then you might have a program that they are building to. So I get where you're saying that it was a shoot because saying I could beat him up in real life. But if he ends up on SmackDown, that could actually be used in his favor. So I don't know.
True. All right. Wait. Now look, more boringness in the company. So SmackDown champions are the Usos. I love the Usos, right? But WWE is a little like hypocritical in the sense that, like, those guys keep getting arrested, right? And then other guys that get arrested are gone. But Roman Reigns' family and crew they can just come right to Raw following like a DUI or something.
Yeah.
And now their younger brother was just signed to NXT.
Yep.
So he'll be coming up. So, I mean, everybody deserves a second chance. But, like, it was a little weird how they just got like 2 or 3 chances and no big deal was ever made. But everybody else either gets fired or they get, like, you know what I mean? Like, laid off for a couple of weeks. Zach, what do you think of that?
It's all politics. There's a lot of pull with the Fatus. The Fatus have been in the wrestling business since the 50s. And whenever it started with High Chief Peter Maivia, and then there was Alpha and Sika, and then there was Rikishi. There was
Head Shrinkers, yep.
the Head Shrinkers. There was King Tonga, the Tonga Kid,
Haku,
Umaga.
the toughest guy of all time. Haku.
These guys, they've been in the family business for so long. So, it's kind of like, they have got one up on McMahon because, they're like, we're a big name draw. We're a big name family. It's just like with the Guerreros, the Rhodes, the Ortons, and the DiBiase's. They have been, wrestling is their life. They are big name draws. So why are you going to throw away your biggest draw because of a DUI? Unless it's somebody that is a first generation, then like these guys that are fourth, fifth, and sixth generation in the business. Why would you throw away someone that is a guaranteed money pool?
But on that same note, are you doing them an injustice by not reprimanding them? Because if they had reprimanded the Von Erichs and had any say over what the Von Erichs did, maybe that wouldn't have ended up in such a tragedy like it did. Because there's no way we should have lost there's no way all the Von Erichs should have passed away like that. Like
right. The Von
Erichs
was a phenomenal wrestling family. And yes, they should be reprimanded. Nobody in the business, the business does not owe you anything. And it's not going to be given to you. It doesn't matter if you are a green kid that's a rookie green kid that's still wet behind the ears, or you've been wrestling for 20, 21 years. You still should be reprimanded for what you have done, because it's unfair to the other guys that are busting their ass. They're in the ring 7 days a week, sometimes twice a week, sometimes twice a day, and they're making themselves better and everything, and they're busting their ass only to get canned and throw out, all because of one little disagreement.
Yeah. So all right. Then there's the next two quote unquote champions. I'm sorry, I have a hard time with it. The women's tag team champions. Like, first of all, this is going to be maybe controversial, but do we need a women's tag team championship? Like, just one? Like, there's one for each show with the guys, right? So if you want to make things even, you figure there'd be two, right? However, there's not, because they really don't have any tag teams, because they don't practice that way. They don't come up that way. So they slap together the two, like, longest tenured, biggest named as far as Tamina's from that bloodline we just talked about. And then you look at the Hart Foundation bloodline. So it's like you just took and they're not very good to watch together. Like, I like the way Nat can perform, but Tamina is I don't know, dude. Do they need to do that tag team like that?
They had one of the best female tag teams in wrestling right now, and they let both of them walk. They split them up and then repaired Peyton Royce with another just generic female wrestler they had. I forget if it was Dana or if it was Mandy. I forget. I think it might have been Mandy. I think there should be a women's tag team belt championship. I think that's important for women's wrestling now, and I think that you could get. I don't think there should be two men's tag team championships. I think that should be unified and the design completely redone, because they don't even have enough men's tag teams right now to make an interesting division. But I definitely think there should be a women's championship.
I'll buy one.
You look at it like this: the women's division in WWE is this big. You look at the male roster, and it's this big. You got to have people, that are willing to work with each other, work together, and not only that, be able to go out there and tell a good story and tell a good and put on a good match and tell a story in the ring, not just backstage on the screen, but also in the ring. They don't have very much to work with, and they are using the same ones every week, and yet you got people down in NXT that are basically unknown because they're not bringing them up, and putting them in televised matches. They put them in dark matches in front of crowds, but in WWE, what's a dark match going to do for someone that's trying to get with a company that's on national television? They're not giving them the opportunities to get over on television with the viewing audience.
All right, but so I would agree, I guess, more with having one male tag team champions that go from show to show, and then having one woman's. My point was, you're trying to make it equal, but you're not. But you're trying to be like, all right, the women, they should have their own tag team titles too. But yet there's 2 male tag team champions, 1 per show. So you're not making it equal. You guys see what I'm saying? Like, they swung and missed on that. They tried to be like,
That was one of the worst decisions, honestly, is splitting up the tag team division for both Raw and SmackDown and giving both of them straight.
Yeah.
Because back then, one team that comes to mind, Unified Tag Team Champions, Jericho, Chris Jericho, and Big Show. They ran roughshod for almost a year, and they were taking on all-comers on Raw and SmackDown to where they ended up losing the belts at TLC to DX. Those guys, they were over, and it's because they could go out there. I mean, Big Show can cut a decent promo, but Jericho is a beast on the mic. And, again, it gets back to going and cutting a good promo, but I can understand wanting to go and bring back more different types of, draws to your other television shows, because Raw's the A show, SmackDown's the B show, NXT's following SmackDown. But, it's all about, who's got the look, who can cut a promo, who's a good worker, and who's a kiss ass.
Yeah, but all right. So the great tag teams that I remember, like the Road Warriors, Demolition, there were no other tag team champions when they were tag team champs. You see what I'm saying? Like, they were the tag team champs. Period. And then secondly, while we're on this topic, one championship is the WWE Championship. One is the Universal Championship. When they made the Universal Championship, they actually tried to knock their own title down a notch.
Mm-hmm.
How does that even make sense?
The way WWE should be conducting business is, if you want to keep the 2 brands separate, that's fine. Have a different roster for both brands. I'm on board with that. There shouldn't be a Universal Championship. Both brands, your top card should be fighting for the WWE World Heavyweight Championship. One show gets the United States Championship. One show gets Intercontinental title. And then you have one set of tag team championships, a women's championship, and a women's tag team championship. So if you are in a program for the women's championship, you can be jumping back and forth between shows, because the championship might be on Raw, but you're a SmackDown superstar.
But only one girl champion means less airtime for the whole women's roster. That's why there's 2 different champions. I have no problem with 2 female champs on each show, because it gives more people time to run programs. That same person's not in every program. You know what I mean? Get some more on air.
That's why you have the women's tag team division, the belt. You could form more tag teams, and on top of that, you could also be running on one show. You could be running a number 1 contenders program with 1 or 2 female superstars competing for the number 1 contenders, as well as running a championship program, as well as running a tag team program, and then maybe have another 1 or 2 B-level programs running, kind of in conjunction with that. I just think they oversaturate their talent and their brand with so many different titles that mean nothing at this point. I mean, why would you want to be the Universal Champion when the WWE Championship is lauded for decades? It's been one of the most prestigious titles that you could win in professional wrestling. Just makes no sense to me.
But it's the number 2 title currently in the WWE.
Yeah, and the weird thing when you think about it is WWE World Heavyweight Championship, WWE Universal Heavyweight Championship. I mean, there's the world, there's the universe. I mean, so which one's bigger? It makes no. Their business model is ridiculously poor.
Zach, what are your thoughts on that?
I was not a fan of the Universal title whenever it came in. I'll just make that known. They retired the big gold belt, the World Heavyweight Championship, that had been held by people like Triple H, Undertaker, Mark Henry, Big Show, Kane, all of those guys, and they go and they just throw it away like it doesn't mean nothing. But I mean, honestly, it's PG era and everything's politically correct. But, it would be better television if the women are going out there and calling each other a bitch and the guys calling each other's mothers whores. It would further the storyline. It's not believable anymore.
Yeah.
It's see-through. And, I'm very critical of wrestling. That's the reason I don't watch WWE anymore, and I very seldomly watch anything. ROH, Ring of Honor, is my brand that I watch every Saturday at noon on my network TV here at the house. I love Ring of Honor. And it's because, they aren't going just for high spots. They're doing ground-based, technical wrestling. They're not doing stuff like the Bucks are doing in AEW with all kinds of flippy shit. Like a friend of mine who's a wrestling legend, Edmund Livewire McGuire. He's good at ring psychology. Heath Hatton's good at ring psychology. Axe Allward's good at ring psychology, but they don't do high spots. He said, they said, who, and especially with the Bucks, with their body type, who's going to believe they can actually beat up somebody in a real fight? Edmund Livewire McGuire asked me that question one night, and I said, probably the guy on this first row that died waiting for him to actually do wrestling.
All right, so let me see where I fall on with this. So here's my thing with that, though. The young Bucks, right? I would be lying if I said that they weren't a team that has slowly won me over, in the sense that they live their gimmick too, and there is something to be said about people that can move that fast and that violently. Does that make sense? Like, how can I best explain it? Like, I didn't believe I said this last week, Joe. You remember I was saying like how you just can't believe certain guys can beat up other guys. It's just hard to do. So my thing with the Young Bucks is, as a tag team, they work because they work with each other. So like they're so on time with each other that like two smaller guys working as one is a good story. So I can buy into them. You know what I mean? Some of the other ones though, like the Lucha Party or something like that, stuff like that, I can't. I have a tough time with the 205 guys to begin with.
Oh yeah.
Right, because it is all flips and it looks choreographed. But my big other issue is, do they seem even tough? Does anybody think they seem tough? Because I don't know. Like he just said, smaller tag teams have never been a big. I've never been a big fan of. But when you get smaller guys that work well together and they're intelligent or they're doing some sort of other angle, you know what I mean? Like they're bringing someone else to the table, then I kind of buy it. So, Joe, does that make me a hypocrite, or where do you stand?
No, it makes a lot of sense. And I'll kind of mention, my favorite tag team and one of my favorite wrestlers of all time, but the Hardy Boyz, where you had Jeff Hardy, who was the king of the flippy dippy stuff. Then you had Matt Hardy, who was just a very grounded technical wrestler who, his realistically his most acrobatic move was just a leg drop off the top rope. But they worked so well together. They knew each other. Granted, obviously they were brothers. They've been wrestling in tandem their whole lives. So I agree with what you're saying, is that if you get a tag team that knows each other so well that you could believe, even though there's a size difference, that they can run circles around bigger talent that may not be able to work together, that are slower, and use their athletic ability and their ability to work as one to take down bigger teams. So yeah, it to me, I'm also a big fan of the Young Bucks because they put on some great matches, and they work well and they wrestle well, and their matches are usually always absolutely fantastic.
So Zach, what do you think of it about it? Kind of phrased that way with smaller guys, like that maybe they can beat you up if they're a tag team, as opposed to like I get it. One Young Buck isn't going to be able to
fight anybody.
Mentality,
you have to go and 2-on-1. That's not good odds. But I mean, it's just a lot of things that I see in professional wrestling nowadays. Everybody's too light. They're not snug like they used to be. You got to lay your shit in and make it look believable, even if you are pulling the punch. or you're hitting them with the meat of the forearm, you still got to lay it in.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, I mean, I've watched numerous Buck matches before. I watched a lot of them in Ring of Honor and New Japan. The only thing I remember out of all everything is the Meltzer driver and the super kick. That's all they got working for them, in my opinion.
Now, all right. So you probably were not a fan of. Hold on, there's gonna be a noise here for some reason. You were definitely not a fan of the Hardy Boys.
Oh, I was a big fan of the Hardy Boys. Me and my brother were big Hardy marks. It's because they made their stuff believable. Because, you know, I watched a match that Heath Hatton sent to me whenever I was still training, and it was the match between Triple H, Hardy, and Edge at Armageddon.
Oh, yeah.
Where he won the title. First 9 minutes of the match, it was technical moves. It was headlocks, takeovers, arm wringers, you know, a lot of technical wrestling. And, you know, you wanted to be able, I mean, I ain't got nothing against any kind of wrestler. It's just, you know, don't do a lot of high spots. Go and show that you are versatile and you could do anything in the ring.
Well, and the best part about that match too is Jeff, for the most part, was kind of playing the he was out overpowered and outmatched, and was you know, outside of the ring, or you know, he was always exactly, and he won by just hitting the swanton onto Triple H, who had just pedigreed Edge. I think that's how it went. I think that was a sequence. It might have been Edge hitting like a spear, but I think it was Triple H hitting the pedigree.
It was a spear going for the one, going for the three, going for the go home. 1-2 swanton on the arm. Edge rolls out, selling his arm.
And then Hardy pinned Triple H.
And then it was the go home for 1, 2, 3.
And that's how you make it believable. You make a guy who's an underdog, who's never really been in that spot before. He has to kind of sneak in and steal his opportunity, because he's not gonna. He could go 1-for-1 with Edge, but not Triple H.
So I think the Hardy Boys won us.
Help that the office that is running the company are actually also the top stars, and they're booking themselves into these kind of spots. Example of honestly how it should be done. The company that I started with, Stride Pro Wrestling, Heath Hatton as the owner, booker, promoter, everything. He's only held the heavyweight title 3 times. He's a 2-time tag team champion and a one-time legacy champion, to my knowledge. And he's had this company for going on 6 years now, but he never books himself in those big title spots because he wants to see other people go the distance.
Mm-hmm.
You know, he's like, Hatton hasn't wrestled for, just for an example, you know, take these guys, Kenny Omega, the Bucks, Rhodes, off of AEW, and let these other guys shine and see how far your company will go by getting themselves over, because at some point the crowd's going to get bored with them, and then they're going to start losing numbers watching every week. They're going to go, and you know, the merch sales are going to go down, and then you're at a stalemate. Where do we go next? You got to keep the product fresh. Quit using recycled formulas and recycling the same character with another superstar. Quit recycling all of the same storylines. You know, you got to keep it fresh. And but for the most part, you got to keep it believable.
So where does the WWE go? Because the SmackDown's good. To me, SmackDown is now the A show, right? It's more organized. There's better wrestlers. There's more better storylines. Raw is like, I can't believe how weird Raw has become. It's like thrown together matches. It's like same matches.
Did you see the shoot match between Charlotte and Nia the other night? I mean, what the hell is going on over there?
Nia's got a bad reputation. Stiff.
Sure, there's rumors coming out of that Raw that Vince ripped up the script 2 hours before and was the most irate he's been ever before a show.
The show until half hour before the red light went on.
Yeah, which is how do you have a week to prepare for a show and not have a show, or at least not have a show that your boss gets behind? It's dumbfounding to me.
If they need help writing, they just need to let me know. I can come up with a bunch of different angles. I can get it going for a couple of months, for crap's sake. Like, I mean, you know, it's the same matches every week. I don't want to see the same matches every week. And you know what it is? It's 50-50 booking. So it's not even like, it's like I win this week, you win the next week. Yeah, back and forth. It's like, where are we going with this? You know what I mean? So, I mean, what do? Do you make it so that it's got more violence in it, more blood, more vulgarities? Where do you go? Because you're trying to sell it to, are you still trying to sell it to kids? I'm lost. I'm lost with the WWE now. I don't know what they're aiming at. I don't know what their goal is. Are they trying to edge here?
They're trying to sell it to kids, but then you look at the target age of the demographic that they're trying to hit. It's 18 to 49. Where is there any kind of minority in that age and that target group?
I would think there's no 18-year-olds really that are into wrestling right now. Do you really think there's a strong generation of 18-year-olds that are into wrestling as opposed to like the older guys that grew up with like the Hogans and the Pipers or Bruno Sammartino's in my area?
That was roughly when I got out of it, was rough between like 17 and 18. I didn't get back into it until mid to late 20s when I was like, oh yeah, wrestling. Like, what's going on? When I got
so are little kids watching it? I don't think little kids are watching it as much anymore, are they?
No. Well, the superhero stuff is selling pretty well with Nikki Ash. So, I mean, there might be, there's some, there's, I don't know.
That's the thing.
Yeah, everyone knows that the people who are watching aren't the kids. It's us. We're still the fans. And that's why AEW right now is so big, because the marks like us, the older fans, are gravitating to something that's more real and coherent and has actual wrestling with actual stories, with actual talent that's being utilized in the right way.
And they're not playing towards little kids.
Yeah.
It's just like, and also this would also help WWE actually hiring writers that's actually been in the business and actually have wrestling experience.
Yeah.
So like back during the Attitude Era, they had Jim Cornette and Bruce Pritchard writing. That was back when it was actually believable and it was actually good shit. And up until 2012, they shit the bed. They had good shit, and then after that, they shit the bed.
I don't think it's even the writing anymore. I think it's the head man. I think it's Vince. Yeah. Like, I think Vince is just tone deaf to what probably the writers are presenting him. Like, wrestlers have always talked about how they try to pitch this to Vince, but Vince did what Vince wanted to do. And I think he's kind of out of touch. I mean, we all get old. We all get out of touch. You know what I mean? Like, that happens. So he took NXT away from Triple H and Shawn Michaels. He's now they got a new logo.
That logo is awful. Nope. I'm not a fan. They're taking Slipknot and Poppy away from NXT, and now they're giving it to Wale is going to have the new intro. Come on, they're pandering, and it's just not good. No bueno.
No, not a fan. Hey, we've reached the hour. Zach, what would you like to give a shout out to or promote?
Oh, I would like to go and say, especially to you guys, thanks for allowing me to come on. Hopefully you guys will let me come back because we got a lot of ground to still cover. Be sure to go, and I highly do recommend that, with support independent pro wrestling, because it's on its ear right now because of the pandemic. Times are tough, and if your local wrestling promotion is asking for a little bit of help, give it to them. Whether it's $1 or $100, they greatly appreciate it. Because I've seen in this last calendar year, a lot of promotions, independent promotions, shut their doors because of this COVID. Support the wrestlers, support the merch table, because they don't start in WWE. They work from the ground up, working in bingo halls and bars and churches and gymnasiums like I used to. Support the local professional wrestling community, and be sure to check out Strictly Insane Pro Wrestling. I am an official up there now. Be sure to support Stride Pro Wrestling on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter. They got a big show coming up tomorrow night that I will actually be in attendance, and I will actually be podcasting to release Friday night and it's Bash at the Ballpark. And there's going to be a lot of good stuff going on. September 11th, I will be refereeing in Sims, Illinois for Strictly Insane Pro Wrestling. We got a stacked card with a lot of good guys. Be sure to check out the Wrestling with Monsters podcast on Spotify and Anchor, and also follow our Facebook page. You can follow me. I'm on Twitter, DR Outdoors 2021. On Instagram, Duke Randall Official. Follow me on Facebook with the Southern Illinois Monster Hunters, and also myself on Facebook, Zach D. Sterick. Follow me on TikTok, Real 618 Cowboy. I'm all over on it.
That's one thing I won't do is go on TikTok. That's where I drew the line as far as technology is concerned. My line was in the sand at TikTok. I said, no, I'm going to stop here. Joe, what do you got to say before we wrap it?
I got nothing. Old school outlaw Duke Randall, thank you for joining us on the show. It was a pleasure to get to know you and chat a little bit. I appreciate it.
Pleasure's all mine, guys.
So, Zach, you remember the guy I traveled with down to Virginia, Kev, Genius Kev? He keeps texting me to say hello to you. He wanted to make sure he said hello.
Hello, Mr. Kev.
Zach will actually be on our show Sunday, the Paranormal Show. So looking forward to seeing him again and talking about a totally different topic. Somehow I get a feeling we're going to slip wrestling in there a little bit on Kev. But Zach, I do want to thank you for coming on. It was a great time. Like I love talking wrestling with people that know wrestling. And it's weird when you're a wrestling geek or an old-time wrestling person, you immediately identify someone who knows wrestling and someone who doesn't know wrestling in the first 5 minutes. And it's a pleasure talking to someone who does know wrestling.
I don't know wrestling.
You do too. You're just from the other side. You like the good guy. You like guys on a few high spots. Like you're
Yeah.
smart.
Yeah.
Different generation. It's a generational thing. All right. Well, the next show tomorrow night we've got Legit Fantasy Football from 7 to 8, and then Bar Fangool, which is our open sports forum at from 8 to 9. We might be doing the fantasy football draft. It might start tomorrow. We don't know yet for Legit Fantasy Football. We will talk to you all tomorrow. Thank you again. So for Joey Paranormal and the old school outlaw Duke Randall, it is me. It's Mike Lepre, King Mike L. This is legitpodcast.com. You can see us at RIPodcast.com and Rhode Island Podcast.com. Thank you for watching.